Well, joining us right now is Marita Noon from the organization of Energy Makes America Great. Marita, we haven't talked to you in a while. It's good to talk to you again.
Thank you. It's always a treat to chat with you.
Well, I know we're going to be talking about a column that you penned recently, and it's appearing on this very same website. But before we do that, we wanted to get your thoughts on an issue that we've been talking about a lot over the last few months, and that deals with energy issues, especially electricity. I know we've had a chance to talk a little bit about Public Service Company of New Mexico, which I know you live in the Albuquerque area. They provide your electricity. But now we're going to focus a little closer to home. And when I say close to home, I'm talking about here in southeast New Mexico, and that's Xcel Energy. You've got some comments on a news release that was issued recently by Xcel Energy, and I was wondering if you could, share some more information with us.
Sure. What Xcel Energy is doing is really the same thing that basically all the energy companies in the state and probably around the country, although I'm more familiar with our local situation. And their press release says right off in the very first paragraph that they are needing this rate increase to recover the cost of investments. Now, this is a key thing to focus on because this is the way these rate increases go. The companies spend the money first, and then they go back to the PRC, the New Mexico Public Regulatory Commission, and ask for the rate increase. Now, once they have spent the money, and spending this money in general is not going to be because the people at Xcel sat around and said, well, let's have higher rates. No, it's because the legislature of New Mexico has required certain things. The EPA on the federal level requires certain things. And in order to stay in business and provide electricity, they must do these improvements. Further on in their press release, they talk about how they are investing $2 billion to retrofit generation plants to make them more efficient and to reduce emissions, and that reduce emissions is a key thing because, again, that's an EPA regulation and also a state regulation that they're having to meet. So once they spend the money to meet these regulations, there's really not much choice but to approve the rate increase that allows them to recoup those expenses. That's really just fair. So what I really hope that listeners will get out of this is to realize that where we need to fight this battle is not now on this current rate increase. They're going to get that rate increase. But where we need to look at is what legislation is coming up that's going to cause us future rate increases. I mean, if you were to ask, if I speak to a lot of groups, and if I was to say, how many of you would like to have higher energy prices, raise your hand? Virtually nobody. I mean, there might be one or two people who get the picture that if they want cleaner air, that's going to mean higher energy prices, who might raise their hand. But by and large, the public does not want to pay more for energy, and they're unhappy at the current rate increases they're receiving. But we need to realize that these things go hand in hand. So if we want to fight future rate increases, we need to look at the regulatory process that's going on right now.
All right, and something else I wanted you to touch upon, too, is you have a column this week, and again, it can be viewed, people can read it in full length at our website right here at ksvpradio.com. Talking about the Center for Biological Diversity. I'm not going to tip too much about the column, but you take it from there.
Yes, because hopefully we want people to go and read the entire column. But the Center for Biological Diversity is supposedly an environmental group. But if you go and study their website and look at their list of staff, they have one ecologist on the staff, and it's heavily weighted with attorneys. I mean, if you go through it, it's like attorney. So I question, are they really about the animals, or are they about lawsuits with the federal government and others? I first became aware of the Center for Biological Diversity when I came on board at Citizens Alliance for Responsible Energy, which is the companion educational arm of Energy Makes America Great, which is our newer entity. But I first became aware of the Center for Biological Diversity when I came on board at CARE back in 2007, because one of our board members is a rancher who lives in Arizona, who the Center for Biological Diversity basically slandered, and they filed a lawsuit against the Center for Biological Diversity, and a jury decision was handed down that the Center for Biological Diversity intentionally libeled this rancher, Jim Chilton, and he was awarded a $600,000 settlement against the Center for Biological Diversity, or from the Center for Biological Diversity, had to pay him $600,000 for their distortion. They showed pictures of damaged lands and claimed that Jim Chilton's cows did this damage, when in fact those pictures were not from his ranch site at all, and it was just plain false. So they distorted the facts in an attempt to block Jim Chilton from using the land that he had a federal lease on and was rightfully allowed to use and was managing well. So that's one issue. Then we have another issue that's in the article. We have a solar plant, a solar plant manufacturer in California by the name of Bright Source, and they're planning on putting in a solar thermal plant in California. Well, the Center for Biological Diversity threatened to sue them. And lo and behold, Bright Source settled with the Center for Biological Diversity. Now, I called Bright Source and spoke to their representative, and they couldn't tell me what the settlement was because the terms of their settlement require that they not disclose that. Well, when you look at the history of the Center for Biological Diversity and you see their propensity to lawsuits, and that's how they fund their activities, which are aimed at blocking development of all kinds, blocking use of the land, whether it be ranching or whether it be for a solar utility-scale solar plant, or whether it be the sand dune lizard in southeastern New Mexico and oil and gas development. They want to block that, and they use lawsuits to do that. So when you look at this Bright Source settlement, you have to know it was a tidy sum that Center for Biological Diversity was handed to make them kind of shut up and go away. So it's really, when you look at that, when you look at this story, you begin to see that, you know what, perhaps it's not really about the critters after all, whether it be the desert tortoise in California or whether it be the sand dune lizard in New Mexico. The Center for Biological Diversity is really not about biology.
You know, and I know it's been a while since you and I have talked about the sand dune lizard. There were a couple of county commission meetings that were held here last week, one in Carlsbad and the other in Roswell, dealing with this issue. Just wondering if you've kind of had a chance to put your finger in the air and see, have you been able to? Let me rephrase this. Have you been able to put your finger in the air and see which way the wind is blowing on this thing right now?
No, I haven't heard anything on those. I had hoped to make it to the one in Roswell, but it was at the same time as the New Mexico Mining Association annual meeting in Albuquerque, so it was closer, and I went there, and I hadn't heard, but I understand you were at the Carlsbad meeting. What happened?
Well, I was at the Carlsbad meeting, and I'll tell you, there was a lot of interesting questions raised. I know County Commissioner Louis Derrick told us here on one of our stations, AM 990 KSVP, that he was doing his best to behave, if you will. But basically, the Fish and Wildlife was saying that there's really not much more they can say. They weren't taking any public comment or anything like that. But, just a very interesting meeting. And I can tell you the meeting here, or the meeting in Carlsbad on Tuesday, or last Tuesday, I should say, it was very interesting because you definitely could feel the tension in the room.
Well, it's a very scary thing what's happening, and it's important that the local citizens there realize that our job is not done here. I mean, sadly the Fish and Wildlife Service is going to make the decision in December, and the likelihood is they're going to decide against the local and logical viewpoint that really is what should factor into this decision. But they're probably not, despite the bad science. There's some other legal alternatives that are available to us, such as a data quality challenge. That is another thing we can do, and that has a potential to block this listing, because as Representative Kintai found, the science behind this listing is just plain faulty. And the Center for Biological Diversity put out really a scathing press release against Representative Kintai and Congressman Pierce, accusing them of outrageous, they didn't use the word lie, I don't remember what it is, but I have it in the article. But their data, they can't fight the data. And so what they had to do is shoot the messenger, because while Kintai's report showed the fallacy in the science behind the lizard listing, when the Center for Biological Diversity came out against Kintai's report, they couldn't attack the science because Kintai was right. But so instead they attacked the messenger instead of trying to defend the science.
Well, Marita, I want to thank you for taking the time for chatting with us regarding a couple of these energy issues. I'm sure we're going to be chatting with you a lot more down the road. Any final comments you'd like to leave us with today?
Well, yeah, these are important issues. The U.S. Energy Information Administration projects that over the next 24 years, we are going to see basically a 24% increase in the need for electricity. And so when you look at Xcel Energy saying, we've got to have more electricity generation here, which is true, they're going to need that. Higher rates are going to be a part of it, but we should be looking at and encouraging them and our legislators to support the lowest cost electricity generation possible, rather than going for more expensive options, or we're just going to see continuing increases in our electric bills.